to another episode of DaaM-U-Football, the show where Marc from the Dude and the Monkey podcast chats about football for around 40 to 45 minutes. This is episode 3 or 4, I believe. I can't remember, to be honest, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. So, hello listeners, I hope you're going to enjoy the show. I'm going to do a kind of quick recap on what's happened in the past couple of weeks in the wider footballing world, focusing mainly obviously on the Premier League. And I'm also going to answer some questions. Probably going to focus mostly on the questions because I've had some really interesting and quite good ones with a few sort of talking points that'll cover a few kind of bases around my particular club, Liverpool, but also as a wider kind of look around sort of football in general, and especially sort of Premier League football and the way that that's governed differently to, or perceived to be governed differently to other football. So, as I say, I am your host, Marc Foster, and we'll kick straight into it. So, since we last recorded, there's been a couple of weeks' worth of Premier League action, plus a international break. I'll tell you now, I couldn't give a shit about international football. I just frankly don't care. I'm one of those terrible fans that I don't care about it, and I do watch tournaments. So next year in 2018 there probably will be a weekly World Cup podcast, being the hypocrite that I am. But there have been a couple of weeks worth of Premier League action to kind of go over. We've had Manchester United continuing their fine form, getting goals in games where last season maybe they wouldn't have. So for instance, Leicester 2-0 at home, still not conceding goals as well, United. But then they followed up with a 2-2 with Stoke last week. Stoke are a battling team, but have not had a fantastic start to the season. But there's always the argument, I think, with when a team has a favourable start to the season, which United have had a favourable start to the season, there's no denying that. However, you could perceive that someone, for instance, like Chelsea had a favourable start to the season by opening the season with Burnley at home, but then that didn't work out too well. So there are the argument that, he's often sort of bound about that there are no easy games in the Premier League. And, it's true, there are no easy games in the Premier League. It's a tough league to win, and every team can battle it out there, and Stoke proves that they're not, I won't go as far as to say a decent footballing team, but they're a tough team to beat at home. Or no, they're a tough team to take points off at home. So 2-2 for United ain't disastrous there. Top 6 teams will take the idea of getting draws like that against teams like Stoke and Watford and West Brom and things like that. If you come away with a healthy draw, then it's not the end of the world, to be honest. Arsenal managed to sort of bounce back after their thumping to Liverpool, 4-0. Arsenal really did start that weekend trying to play into Liverpool's hands by essentially acting very much on the front foot. This Liverpool team has two kind of ways of playing. It has the phrase that people would use is gegenpress. It's not quite a gegenpress actually, though, in terms of for how they play it often. But what Arsenal did was they chose to try and take Liverpool on at their own game. And the truth of the matter is that Arsenal are a little bit, they're more than the sum of their parts, Arsenal. And the problem is their parts aren't all kind of working quite right at the moment. So it's going to be a tough season for Arsenal, and they're going to, in a similar way to Liverpool, they're going to have these kind of perceived kind of ups and downs where things are going to look a little bit glum at points, to be honest. They're going to get the odd thumping, very much similar to Liverpool in how they are going to get the odd sort of thumping, which brings me, I'm going to bounce between weeks here, so if it seems confusing, then so fucking what. Liverpool, we suffered a heavy defeat at the hands of Manchester City this last week, a 5-0 thrashing, really. Liverpool going down to 10 men fairly early on, which I'll come to because I've had a question about that. So I'll come to my thoughts on that when we get to the actual question element of it there. But then what happened was Manchester City dealt with Liverpool very well and played very, very well, but Liverpool, they didn't react to the sending off very well at all. They kind of they were felt a little bit too sorry for themselves, really, and that created a situation whereby Manchester City had to play, all they had to do was play well to get the maximum points, but they didn't. They played very well and ended up giving Liverpool a to be honest, a deserved pace thing, really, to be honest. But I don't think that'll be the first time this season that happens. A lot of focus will be put on the Liverpool defence, which again I've had a question about, which I will come to later on. And it's quite right that focus should be put on there. But again, I'll come more to that. The wheels have started to come off a little bit for the Everton train a little bit. Being a Liverpool fan, there was a lot of and as anybody will know, if you're new listeners, I'll probably repeat this. Apologies if I am for long-term listeners to the podcast, or short but long-term listeners to the DaaM-U-Football podcast. I'm a non-partisan football fan in the sense that I don't believe in the tribalism of it. If my team wins football, it doesn't make me look better. I don't understand it. I will never get my head round how people so much kind of identify themselves as their team. So if their team's winning, it's fantastic, and if somebody else's team that they don't support is losing, it's really funny. I don't care, to be honest. I care if my team wins. If my team wins, fantastic. If it doesn't, I don't give a shit who else fucking wins or loses, to be honest. So yeah, it was kind of like that. But the Everton were, because they spent a lot of money this season, counteracted by the fact that they sold Romelu Lukaku for 90 million and were going to sell Ross Barkley for what they perceived to be about 30 million. So their actual net spend wasn't that high, and people will then start criticising and say, well, net spend doesn't make sense. But net spend is kind of what you've got to have a look at if you, for instance, it's crazy to think that the net spend isn't relevant. It is. If you ship 100 million's worth of players and you buy 105 million pounds worth of players, then effectively you've improved your squad to the tune of 5 million. That's the way it is. Whereas if you spend 250 million and you recoup 100 million, then what you've actually done is you've improved your squad to the tune of 150 million. If you spend 25 million but you recoup 100 million, it means that your squad is down 75 million pounds worth of players. That's I don't get this current trend of saying that net spend doesn't matter. Of course it matters. It's insane to think it doesn't. So Everton had a big outlay, but a small enough net spend, a large net spend, but not a Manchester City or Manchester United net spend. A bigger net spend, however, than Liverpool is what I would say there. And so they were very much very bullish, which they should be. Everton fans, things were looking quite rosy at that point. Very bullish about the way that their season might go, and there was the obvious, we'll I guarantee we'll finish higher than Liverpool, etc., which they may well do. They've got a good manager and a good squad. But then the back-to-back defeats, Chelsea 2-0, and then getting beat at home 3-0 by Spurs, and then getting beat by Atalanta in the Europa League 3-0. Again, kind of highlights the fact that although they've brought Wayne Rooney back to the club to replace Romelu Lukaku, I don't know if that can be perceived as right. It still shows that they are actually really quite short in the forward line, and not signing a striker which was a priority. Seemed to be a frustration, I would say, for the fans, and probably for Ronald Koeman. It's parallels can be drawn for that to Liverpool not signing a centre-back. However, I think it's not something you can really, I suppose, they're not perfectly similar in the sense that Liverpool were trying to shop at a very different level of the market to where Everton have the ability to shop. That's not me downplaying Everton. That's not me having my red hat on or anything like that. It's just a simple fact. A couple of years ago, Liverpool were shopping exactly the sort of same markets as Everton. Once you have Champions League football and you are one of the financially top 10 clubs in the world, and historically one of the top 10 clubs in the world, and one of the the big clubs in world football. People will say about Liverpool, it's all history, but the fact is that Liverpool still are a global name, and they're a global sports brand. So what Liverpool were trying to do was try to shop in that just below top echelon of football. So you've got your clubs like Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, and Barcelona to an extent, PSG, Manchester City, and you can probably throw Manchester United into there. They're shopping at one end of the market, and then you've got just below that you've got teams like I think Chelsea to an extent in this, and then Liverpool, AC Milan, Borussia Dortmund, and clubs like that are then shopping in that. You know, you could maybe even throw Tottenham into that if they actually, you know, showed some financial ambition, which they've got the stadium, etc., and everything like that. So there's all that going on there. But there you've got that kind of group of clubs, and then they've got the group below that, which is where Everton are shopping at, and to seemingly be wanting and very much saying they need to sign a striker, it shows that the market was kind of all over the place this season, because, you know, a year ago Everton could quite easily have gone out and spent 25 million and got a 15 to 25 million pounds worth of player for that. This season, 15 to 25 million pounds worth of players were going to cost you 40 million, and it's not going to get you what you want. And so Everton ended up not with anything, which might come back and bite them in the arse. But I think that'll become a theme, to be honest, over the course of the season for a few clubs. I would say you'll get that with certainly with Liverpool defensive problems, but I'll come to that later on. But you'll also get that with Manchester City. I think not bringing an extra striker in, they've Iheanacho going to Leicester has left them with, and I say this, just Gabriel Jesus and Sergio Aguero at the club. Well, we all know Aguero's going to have a few weeks out over the season. We don't know about about how well or robust Gabriel Jesus is, or Gabriel Jesus, how robust his physicality is for the Premier League. He's far too young to sort of say that. He might be somebody like Romelu Lukaku, who will deliver you 36 to 38 games a season. He might be more along the lines of Aguero, who will give you 26 to 32 games a season. So that may be where Manchester City will have to probably look at putting someone like Sane, putting him through the middle, or even Kevin De Bruyne could play through the middle there. I would certainly think he's a good enough footballer and a strong enough footballer and an intelligent enough footballer to switch into that position with a relative ease. So I don't think they'll have that many problems. I think it's going to be around the clubs like Everton and Liverpool. I think are the two glaring clubs that have kind of big, I suppose, holes within their squads. And you could also say the same for Chelsea. Their squad is quite light on there. But yes, so what else happened last week? Chelsea, yes, beating Leicester in about a good few weeks. They seem to have come back from that early season wobble. Conte is a fiery personality. And the guy has form for making his frustrations known, and is just quite known quite firmly. So he's already kind of sort of saying that. What have we got coming up fixtures wise this week to have a look at the interesting games that are coming up? So we've already had Bournemouth against Brighton, which Bournemouth pulled out a 2-1 win. It's a good win for them. They've had a stinky start to the season, but I think they'll be all right. I think they're not gonna finish top half, but I just don't see them being relegation fodder. They've spent money. They've spent okay. I think I won't go as far as to say they spent well. But then we've got Crystal Palace against Southampton. Southampton really need to start going and work out what they're going to do with Virgil van Dijk, whether or not he's going to have to just kind of sit it out and wait until a possible January move, or whether or not he's going to actually be brought back in to the fold there. They have a weird system where Stephen Davis is the club captain, but Virgil van Dijk is the game captain, so he plays more than Stephen Davis, so he's the captain on the field, and then you've got Stephen Davis is captain of the club. It's a strange system, but it seems to work quite well. Or it seemed to work for them. Huddersfield against Leicester. Huddersfield started the season quite well. Leicester, they're doing what they did last season. Liverpool against Burnley. Burnley, that's going to be an interesting one. Burnley play quite a low block, and of course Liverpool struggled against that low block. It's going to be a game where I think if Liverpool get an early goal, then you could see Liverpool going on and having a good time against Burnley. So if Liverpool scored in the first 20 minutes, you could be looking at a 3-4 goal swing in that game. Chris Wood has been a great signing for Burnley. He's more than just a lumpy forward player. He's an intelligent footballer. We saw that with his goal against Crystal Palace, where it was a gift and he was given the ball clean through, but it was an intelligent finish and he really did spin off, and it showed technique. And you can't be a big lump and have that level of technique and not expect to score goals. I think he'll be a solid. I think he'll get 15 goals this season. Probably enough to keep Burnley up. Sensible buy, that really sensible buy. Newcastle against Stoke, with the way Newcastle are at the moment and the way Stoke have been for years. That's a thoroughly dull-looking game. Watford against Man City, I think Watford could cause Man City problems there. They're going to cause teams problems. Marco Silva is very defensively organised. He brings that defensive solidity and that complete organisation to his teams. And Manchester City, it's away from home. They look solid. I would say that I don't think Watford are going to steal a win or anything like that, but I think Watford are going to make it difficult. But I would still say you'll probably see a Manchester City win by 3-2 or something like that. West Brom against West Ham, Battle of the Wests. Again, two teams who seem to just kind of exist for not a lot, really, just to be a bit. West Ham are permanently in some kind of crisis, and West Brom are just. I don't think their fans really know what to expect of them at the moment. Probably be a 1-1 or 2-1 or something like that. Spurs against Swansea is interesting. It'd be quite interesting if Llorente plays, gets his Spurs debut. I don't think he's played yet. His Spurs debut there. Spurs should cost that quite easy. Chelsea against Arsenal is a very interesting one. I think Chelsea could give Arsenal a bit of a thwacking there, because Arsenal just seem to be on the ropes a little bit at the moment, and Chelsea, Conte's Chelsea do sort of play on that. They are a bit of a machine in that sense, and Chelsea do like beating Arsenal, so yeah, that could be quite an uncomfortable afternoon for Arsenal. And Manchester United against Everton. Historically, that's been an easy 3 points for Manchester United. I don't see that changing. I think that the interesting thing is going to be, will Rooney play against Manchester United, and will Lukaku perform against Everton? It'd be quite interesting if that was a 1-1 draw and both those players scored goals. But yeah, it's an interesting matchup, that, to be honest. So again, I'm thinking that'll probably go to United. So my games there are going to be Palace against Southampton. I think that's going to be a draw. Huddersfield, Leicester. I think Huddersfield are going to take that. Liverpool, Burnley. I think Liverpool will win, but it'll be either be 2-1 or 4-1. Newcastle against Stoke. I think Newcastle will take that by a couple of goals to 1. Watford against Man City. Man City 3, Watford 2. West Brom against West Ham, 1-1 written all over it. Spurs against Swansea, 3-1 to Spurs. Chelsea, Arsenal. I think Chelsea are going to beat them 4-1. And Manchester United, Everton, 2-0 to Manchester United there. I'm not going to go into transfer talks. It's 2 weeks after the transfer window. It's finished. My kind of thoughts are, I think that the idea now is that next season the transfer window will finish before the season starts. I think it's a very good idea. Anyone who's saying that we should scrap the transfer window, that'd be a terrible idea. The transfer window is there for a very good reason, and I think that it needs to stay. But I think the sensible idea is to change. Is to change the way that this is going, and to change the way it is done. It's crazy the fact that, for instance, you had Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain joining Liverpool, and in his first interview referenced the fact that he said, we are in really good form, winning our last game 4-0. Well, he played for Arsenal in that last game that they won 4-0. Incidentally, in the past 2 games, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain's played in the Premier League. The teams have had he played for, have conceded 9 goals, and the teams that he's played for have scored 0. Looking up for him. So yeah, that's kind of that. I think that it needs to happen. The reason why it can't happen, that they can get rid of a transfer window, is because it will lead to teams, if they get an injury at right back, they'll just go out and buy a right back, but they won't buy it from the Premier League. They'll buy it from sort of lower down, and it causes chaos. The transfer windows are a good idea. They just need to be. The situation needs to be looked at every few years. So I've got some decent questions, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to fire off these questions in a second to get kind of an idea from there, because there's some decent discussion points that I can go to from here, which is great. The thing is, what I wanted to do with this podcast is to kind of get off discussion points and to answer questions and sort of give sort of my views on that, if people want my views on these things. So Ian Loring, thank you very much, Ian, my podcasting life partner, and he's asked, if you kicked someone in the face accidentally, would you expect to get sent off? This is in reference to the Sadio Mane sending off against Manchester City, I am assuming, Ian. So, yes, well, to explain the situation for y'all who don't know, which I'm sure if you're listening to this you do know, Sadio Mane was sent off for dangerous play because he had a high foot where he was running onto a 50-50 ball, and Edison, the Manchester City keeper, came out of his area, went to head the ball, and Sadio Mane's foot essentially did quite badly clash with his face, knocking the keeper seemingly unconscious, we think. There's been no confirmation that he was not unconscious, I don't think, but has left a nasty mark on his face. And Sadio Mane was sent off, and there seems to be a lot of conjecture about whether or not it is a sending off or it isn't a sending off. Now, the general consensus, I'll put my opinion in a minute, but the general consensus is that the referee was abiding by the letter of the law and therefore had to send him off. Not technically true, but I'll get to that in a minute. But the majority of senior pros who've played the game seem to all say the same thing, is that Sadio Mane has to go for that ball. He has to go for that ball. Otherwise, he gets accused of shirking out of a challenge. Sadio Mane is not the type of player to shirk out of a challenge. My view on it was, and I watched it in real time. I wasn't in the stadium, but I watched it when I watched it in real time. Was that it was a clash. The first part of this is that you have to take out you have to look at it in stages. Now, the thing is, I don't think it was a red card. That's not just me, little head on. It's two players both going for the ball, coming together. And that's kind of what happens. It is a contact sport. It is a physical sport. Edison sadly comes off quite a lot worse than Sadio Mane. And Sadio Mane's foot is up high. Let's put a pin in that for a second. Now, the goalkeeper, once he comes out of his area, becomes an outfield player. So therefore, he can't use his hands. However, he does duck his thing in. For a start off, to put to your question, Ian, he doesn't actually kick him in the face. And that's not semantics. He doesn't kick him in the face. He's jumping up to get the ball with his foot in his face, and his foot collides with the head. So you could argue one of two things is, one, if he's kicked him in the face, technically Edison's also headbutting him in the boot, which is a strange one. It's not a kick, it's not a headbutt, it's a coming together. Now, do I think he should have been sent off? No. Can I see why he was sent off? Absolutely. The angle the referee actually has from it is the gnarliest looking angle. It is a high foot that's going at someone's face. If you rewind back 3 minutes, actually Sadio Mane got kicked in the face by a high boot on the edge of the Liverpool area, and not even a free kick was given, and it wasn't even mentioned. And I know that watching Goals on Sunday, Ray Parlour mentioned this, where he suggested and said that in his view that he said just exactly the same as what I've just said, in his view that he can see why the referee has sent him off, but he doesn't feel that it should have been a sending off, but he's looking at it from a player's point of view and the referee is looking at it from a referee's point of view. They are two very different ways to look at things. So from a player's point of view, he said, I don't think he should have been sent off. I wouldn't have wanted to get sent off if it had been me, but would I have wanted him to get sent off if I was Edison? Maybe. He said, however, and he brought it up and said, if that would have happened in the middle of the pitch between two midfielders, two forwards, two defenders, it probably wouldn't have even got a yellow card. So there is that. If you accidentally kick somebody in the face, should you get sent off? All depends on the accident. The thing is, it's been dealt with, I think, quite well by all parties. Sadio Mane, was apparently very much kind of like asking the Man City staff how Ederson was and if he was okay and wanted to be let known, and has spoken to Ederson about it and has kind of said that he's issued an apology and said, look, I was going for a ball, but he has also come out and said, if the same thing happens again, I will do it again, and Ederson, to his credit, has acted very, very well within the whole thing, and he's come out actually and also said that that he isn't going to comment whether he thinks this is a red card, but he has said, these things happen. I will guarantee that won't be the first time he gets clattered. That's the type of keeper he is. He does come out to those challenges. It's an incredibly brave challenge to make, in the same way as it's an incredibly brave challenge for Sadio Mane to make, because if you've got 6'2", 15 stone worth of of goalkeeper running at you and you're about to get clattered, fair enough. I actually had a friend who was at the game and he said that he was actually sat in the Man City end, and he actually said that the general consensus when the referee ran towards it, he said around him the thought was, oh shit, they're sending the keeper off. So there it is. It was one of those in the sense that I don't think it was a sending off. I don't think anyone would have actually blamed the referee if he'd not sent him off, if he'd just kind of calmed the situation and gone yellow. I think it would have probably been... It probably would. I don't think that there would have been that much fuss made of it. But he didn't red card him, but the angle he had very much did make it look like it was dangerous play, which you can argue it was. The thing is, if Ederson is half a second later, it's not dangerous play, it's very good play, but he isn't. He gets there perceivably at the right time or at exactly the wrong time. Therefore, what Sadio Mane is doing, therefore, does become dangerous play, and that is the thing. This game is played at such a pace that it is incredibly difficult for referees. I actually think Jonathan Moss is a terrible referee in general, to be honest, and I can't believe he was even given the game between Liverpool and Manchester City. I think it's a game well beyond his actual skill set as a referee. And I do think he made the decision far too quickly. He was already reaching for his back pocket before he'd actually got to the situation. And I think he maybe should have given himself a few seconds to kind of go, right, let me just replay it in my head. But I think his reaction there was bang, red card, which suggests that what happened is he saw it as dangerous play. Referee's there to make a tough decision, and he did make that tough decision quite quickly. So fair enough. I was angry about it at the time, but then when you go back and you look at it, a little bit less involved in the emotions of the game, even as a fan, then you can see why. I still don't think it was a red card, and I don't think if it happens to, let's just say it's going to happen a few times this season, what is going to happen is next time, when I actually turned around to Bet said what will happen at some point this season is the keeper's going to rush out and he's going to do the same thing, clatter a forward, and then they're going to get sent off, and it's going to be, right, which one's which then? So that's my thoughts on that. So to answer your question, Ian, didn't kick him in the face, it was coming together. That's not a kick. Punter, at Punter01, which is Paul from the Chinstroker versus Punter podcast. How is it Klopp can't organise a defence but retains his job, yet De Boer only gets 4 games? Good question. De Boer, I'll answer it in 2 parts. De Boer got 4 games because the hierarchy at Crystal Palace were split in whether or not they wanted him to be the manager or not. So it was kind of like they saw an opportunity to get rid of him very quickly, and they did. When you bring a manager in who has a very clear philosophy of playing, you've got managers who have a style of playing, a la the man that they've brought in to replace De Boer in Roy Hodgson. He has a style. He is incredibly dull. He's an incredibly dull man. I find him, to be honest, and I found him before he became Liverpool manager, and it still fucking hurts me to say that. I found him always to be an incredibly dull and pompous man who's obsessed with telling you his achievements that he had in Norway. Fucking hell, in Norway. Anyway, I digress. He's going to come in and he's going to stifle any creativity, and he's going to, for the next 32 games, attempt to not lose 32 games. And if he wins 9 or 10 along the way, then brilliant. They might survive. He will proclaim his genius if they do survive. It's 4 games into the season, I might add. And Crystal Palace have a very strong squad. And if they go down, he'll say, well, you know, they were bottom of the league when I got here and I just couldn't steady this ship. There's no ship to fucking steady with 4 games into the season. So, yeah, that's what happened. De Boer is... It's still yet to be seen whether De Boer's a great manager. De Boer, like a lot of players around that kind of... and especially Dutch players around that kind of... well, managers around this age, he wants to be... he wants to be the Barcelona manager in the same way that Ronald Koeman wants to be the Barcelona manager. So these are stepping stone clubs. He moved from Ajax to Inter. It didn't work at Inter. He then went to Crystal Palace. It hasn't worked at Crystal Palace. He will probably end up with a job at somewhere like a Valencia next, or one of the Turkish clubs maybe. I could see that possibly happening in the not too distant future there. But will he ever be Barcelona manager? It's unlikely, but he has a philosophy. He plays 3-4-3, and he was maybe not given the license to bring in the players he wanted to play that 3-4-3. He was certainly not given the time to implement it. Would it have worked? I don't know. It might have, it might not have worked. The fact is, though, that the 3-4-3 works a lot better at a club like Ajax than it does at many other clubs, because of the fact is Ajax breed their academy, which is one of the greatest academies in world football. They breed footballers there. That's the idea. They don't breed positions there. So in a lot of times in academies, when academies take on players, 80% of players that academies take on are forward-based players, and then they get moved back. So the biggest kids get moved back to central defence. The quicker kids who can't finish get put into wing positions, and if they can't cross a ball that well, they get put into full-back positions. Midfielders who are slight of frame get put into full-back positions, and central defenders who are big lads but who can pass the ball get moved into midfield, and little nippy 5'9", 5'6" players who want to be central midfielders and who don't have the finishing ability to be strikers get made into number 10s. That's what happens. That is how the British academy system works. You are essentially assigned a position. In Holland, you'll often find, and this can be proven by looking, they are deemed, if you're a forward, you should be able to play as a striker or a winger or as a support striker. If you're a midfielder, you should be able to play all facets of midfield plus at least one facet of defence. And if you're a defender, you should be able to play centre-back and full-back and a defensive midfield position if required. Therefore, the 3-4-3 is a starting block formation where you start with 3 central defenders, and then you start with 4 midfielders who can also occupy the full-backs, or you have 3 central defenders who can, 2 of whom who can also play full-back, and then one of your midfielders drops back in to create a back 4, and it is 100% fluid football. Hence the phrase that was coined in the 60s, 70s of total football. It's a completely fluid system where essentially it's an ecosystem that travels itself round, and all of your players can filter into different positions. Now that's fine if you've got players who've been bred from 10, 11 years old to be able to play 3 or 4 different positions. That's fine. However, if you've got players like Andros Townsend and Wilfried Zaha and Christian Benteke as your forward 3, they can basically play their positions they're put in. They can't play these back positions. They can't also, and also a lot of the time in the Ajax youth system, wingers are actually put into use as fullbacks to give them an idea of how to play defensive football. There's no way, as talented players as Wilfried Zaha is, that he could ever play as a fullback. So that's kind of why it happened. I doubt it would have ever been that much of a success at Crystal Palace, but it does show the fact is that chairmen of clubs that could get relegated are so afraid of getting relegated that going for what could be perceived, whether or not he is or not, but he's perceived as a progressive coach, and a coach of the philosophy like De Boer can be replaced so easily with a manager that's philosophy is turgid, miserable football and lowering of expectations, as Roy Hodgson can be seen as a good thing. I do feel, Crystal Palace supporters are very good supporters and they support their club very well, and it's always a great atmosphere there. And I do feel sorry for them having to put up with having that dour of a level of football to look forward to. So sorry about that, Crystal Palace. However, I don't think it quite was working out there. Punter, again, thank you, Rich Paul. Is it time for a wage or transfer fee cap, or will football continue to follow society's rich get richer model? It's something that you couldn't put in a salary cap, in the sense that you'd have to. The thing is, the added salary, and people always point to the fact that there's a salary cap in American sports. Well, the thing there is, they do trades in American sports. And I don't know American sports inside out. I'm not going to pretend to. However, the NFL, they don't really transfer players in from other leagues in the world in the same way as football does. So if you're going to have a salary cap, then you've got to have it as a global salary cap. And then it's a case of how does it work? Is it a percentage of your turnover? Well, then you incur the fact is that what you would have is you'd have what has been a phrase that was coined by Arsene Wenger, which is financial doping, which is what you could argue Manchester City and very much Paris Saint-Germain have done, whereby they've used their considerable resources as the owners for the companies, and essentially they have overpaid for sponsorship deals to flood up, to give the turnover a boost. Therefore, turnover has a boost. Therefore, the amount of money that you're making versus the amount of money that you can lose is skewed. So, a salary cap, therefore, would it work? The question is, does something have to be done about the rise in transfer fees and the rise in wages? I don't necessarily agree in the wage thing, because it's an entertainment industry, and the players are the ones who are doing the entertaining, and they are the ones who are most handsomely rewarded. It's a shame, because the fact is that watching football, be it in the stadium or on TV, etc., it is getting more and more expensive. But the people who are playing are getting paid more and more and more. Is there a disparity between that? And should there be something done about that? Absolutely. The fact of the matter is, though, for every one person who's complaining about the price of their ticket, they're also complaining about their club not spending enough in the transfer market. It's a double-edged sword. You can't have one without the other. I think that the Premier League needs to do something about ticket costings. I think that there should be a universal banding, wherefore it should be X amount they should be able to charge for home games versus X amount they should be able to charge for to away fans. I think that the Premier League should write into their rules that all clubs have to pay the living wage to every single employee at the club. It's insane that you might have a 19-year-old kid who is just breaking into the team, might be on £25,000 a week, but the guy, and he's sat on a bench, or maybe not in the squad, he's sat in the stands watching the game in one of the club's suits. And then you might have a kid who's 19 years old, who's going through university, and he's working on the kiosk there, and he's getting paid less than the living wage. That's disparity of jobs. You can't. It all boils back down to well, how can a footballer be earning £30,000 a week when a nurse is only earning £30,000 a year? That doesn't make fucking sense. That's like saying, why is a steak £17 but a banana's 17 fucking p? They're different things. Do footballers get paid too much? Probably. Yeah, they probably do. Footballers would probably admit that they get paid too much. But it's an entertainment industry. Do musicians get paid too much? Yes. Do actors get paid too much? Yes. There you go. Do MPs get paid too much? Yes. Do I think that comparing a footballer to a nurse is fair? No. Do I think comparing an MP to a nurse is fair? And they get paid 3 times the amount for doing less fucking work. So I don't find that. I find that a redundant argument to have with people. The transfer cap, yeah, that should be looked at without question. The way you could do it is you could have a banding. They should change it so that squad sizes can only be a certain size, and it should be completely 100% ring fenced, in a sense that they should up the size of your Premier League squad at the moment is 25. 25 over 22 players, of which 7 have to be homegrown, but you can have any number of under 22-year-old players. That is the current squad size. It should be ring-fenced. It should be that your squad shouldn't be allowed to be, and this should be all across Europe, UEFA should be on top of this, that your squad cannot be anything more than 45 players, or you could even say, 45 players there. That gives you 4 teams you could put out. It could be no more than 45 players overall. Overall size of your squad could be no more than 45 players. And 35 of those are named in your Premier League squad, and they are the ones that can play. Now, in that, I think if that should be 35 players, but you can add up to 10 academy players throughout a season to that. But they have to have been in your academy from the start of that season. Therefore, you can't go out and buy a 16-year-old kid, sling him in your academy, and then state that he can be not added there. So therefore, you can add it as a 35-man squad, and that is set. You can't have any more. You can add in January, but it has to be set at 35, and that includes under 22-year-old players. Therefore, you can't have what happens at some clubs, Chelsea in particular, of this, where they have a huge squad but loan so many of them out. And that's what you get. You could have a banding situation where you state, right, you've got between 150,000 and 300,000 is one band, and you can a club can have so many players in this. And then you have a second band which is 100 to 150,000, and a club can have players into that. And you have another band and it goes down, and you can have so many players that fill out each band. But then you kind of, there's almost a level of there, are you punishing successful clubs? There is a way around it, but it would take a lot of sitting down and making agreements. And sadly, the most powerful clubs in the world are also the richest clubs in the world, and they'll never do anything to change that. They want to keep that fucking monopoly going. Another question from Punter. I'm very glad for all these. Thank you very much, Paul. England under 21 teams are always competitive internationally. So what happens between them and moving to the senior side? What happens there is they're moved in too many drips and drabs. I think is the problem, and I think that too much kind of, I don't want to say dead weight, but it is kind of the best way to describe it. Too much of the underperforming is kept there. I think that England has a problem in the England national team in the fact that it thinks it should be in the top 8 clubs in the world, and it maybe shouldn't. We produce too many of the same type of players, but we also have an identity which doesn't mirror the type of players we produce. So that's our problem. We're also constantly trying to search for an identity, and we have been constantly trying to search for an identity for since we failed to qualify for the World Cup. In the 70s, we've constantly tried to look to other nations to kind of take from what we want. Especially my generation, we've looked at the way that France are doing things, then we've looked at the way that Spain are doing things, then we looked at the way that Germany are doing things, then we looked at the way that Belgium are doing things. And the thing is, with all of these nations, what they've done is they've done what they want to do, and they've taken a holistic approach to how they do it. And now England have tried to take a holistic approach in the way that they've managed the national team. But then the problem is they keep changing the holistic approach halfway through it to kind of mirror whatever is the new other version of that time. So we changed it to be like France, but then, look what happened with Spain. So then we tried to change, look what Spain, but then, but look what's happening in Germany. We need to do that. We need to have a root and branch upheaval and do that because Germany is doing very, Belgium. What's happening there? Well, the head of the Belgian Youth Development thoughts on it are quite simple. Look, we got lucky. It's nothing to do with the way I'm doing anything. We got lucky. England have been decided, look, we have very talented players. The problem is we're trying to we let our club colours mirror what's happening internationally. So we build players up far too much when they're far too young, and then we knock down very good players at the wrong time. And also as well, I think there's an idea in that players remain awfully young as England players for now. Like I keep seeing that Ross Barkley, he's still a young player. He's 23. Lionel Messi had won 2 World Player of the Year awards by the time he was 23. It's you can argue that Michael Owen's career practically died by the time he was 23. It's what I'm saying, Robbie Fowler. So we need to kind of readdress the way that we look at international football. Also to the extent of for instance, we had a healthy win against Malta the other week, and we still criticised players. Playing international football is difficult. It's not as easy as club football because they're not with these players that much. England under-21s, the under-21 players are infinitely better than their counterparts, majoritively. Are the England under-21 players better than the Dutch under-21 players, the Spanish under-21 players, and the Italian under-21 players? They're on a level with them. They are. But these players who play for Holland's international under-21s and Spain's under-21s, Italy's under-21s, even France under-21s, if you look, they will reach 200 career games a lot quicker than English under-21 players will often reach 200 career games. I think at the moment, the England under-21s captain is Joe Gomez, the Liverpool player, a very good prospect and a good player, but he's 22 years old, I think he is, 21 years old. He's only at 50, 60 career games. It's, then you can look at someone like Aymeric Laporte, the France international, 22 years old, and I think he's at 200 career games already. That's the thing is these players need to be given an opportunity to fail, essentially. Part of being a great footballer is growing that maturity. If by the time you get to 25, 26, you're only just hitting 200 career games, you've not had the chance to fail. So that by the time you get to 27, 28, that's when you're starting to become a mature player. Now, mature players should be when they're in their, football's careers go from 18 to 34, 35. It's a 15-year career. So therefore, that middle ground is where we give too much stock. And then all of a sudden, players are 27, 28 years old, and we've still not got to the mindset that these players should be mature players who should be leading teams. I also think that England keep players there too long. Joe Hart, for instance, shouldn't be England's number one. He's not. Get Jack Buckland in there, and let him make his mistakes in friendlies and qualifiers that are meaningless, so he can get to a World Cup as England's number one keeper, which he probably should be. But also, we need to get rid of the idea of standing. Italy don't have standing. It doesn't matter the fuck you are. If you're good enough to play for the international team, you'll play for it. That's why Italy always do very well. So, bringing players into the squad, having a settled international squad where you know who's going to be in it every single time it's released, and you can pretty much guess of the 23, 21, 22 of them, and there's the occasional fucking surprise a player who's had a decent 6 weeks but then he never comes in again. That's wrong. Also, we've relied too heavily on players who have had past glories who have had injuries. There's no point in taking an injured player to a tournament. The reason why England have failed at tournaments is they've carried too much too much dead weight. So that's, I think, why is that they're not given chance. A prime example was a couple of years ago. Jay Rodriguez, the ex-Southampton player now at West Brom, was brought into the international fold, and he had a poor first couple of games, but he was kind of played out of position. But it was instantly decided that he's not of England quality because he had an inauspicious start to his England career. Well, you've not fucking given him a chance. You've written him off after a game and a half where he's been played out of position, But then you might have, and I do rate Harry Kane quite highly. You have Harry Kane who has a stinking Euros, and he did have a stinking Euros, but nobody ever turns around and says, well, maybe he's just not cut out for international football, which he is thoroughly. I'm not having got Harry Kane. What I'm saying here is we need to just have a little bit more patience with the England team and accept the fact that actually it's not as good as we think it probably is. So therefore, we need to allow it a chance to fail and not think that it's a disaster every time it does. And also, international football only matters at tournaments, so let's wait and fucking see what happens there. So that's my answer to that. Tom Ripley actually replied to the comment about about Crystal Palace, saying Crystal Palace didn't score a single goal, which is true. Crystal Palace didn't score a single goal, and then Paul responded saying, surely an issue with the forwards, not a manager who's only a few games in. And yeah, I think that often players, to form a question out of that, I think often players do get away with a lot when managers get sacked. I think the manager is always the first port of call in terms of when things get sacked. And if a player drops their application by 5%, if an entire squad does that, that's the difference between getting beat 1-0 and getting beat 4 or 5-0. Liverpool proved that in their game against Manchester City. They proved that. And getting back to a question that I only actually answered half of earlier when he was saying about when Paul asked a question about how his Klopp can't organise defence but retains his job. Klopp can organise defence. Is my answer there. Defence. The reason why Liverpool concede so many goals is the way that Liverpool play. We play. It's twofold. Liverpool are going to concede a lot of goals in the same way that Klopp's Borussia Dortmund team conceded a lot of goals. That's the way he plays. He plays a high press game. Wherefore, if you get past, it's 3 blocks. So you've got the starting block where everything moves forward. Your forwards move forward to attack the ball. Your midfield then moves up and your defence moves up. So there's a lot of space behind. Your idea there would be your keeper would then step up. Mignolet doesn't like stepping up. That's why he brought in Karius. Karius hasn't quite worked yet. I do think that Karius will be Liverpool's first choice keeper by the start of next season. And I think that Mignolet will move on and will go to Napoli, I believe. Just a future prediction from me. Whether that comes off, I might be talking absolute broken biscuits. But there we go. Because Liverpool play that block, once you get past that block, if anybody switches off for a brief fraction of a second, like Emre Can did against Seville, everything has to drop back quite quickly. When you're pedalling back, mistakes make easier. The reason why Liverpool concede so many goals is because their defenders aren't good enough. Simple as that. I believe Joe Matip is a very good defender, and with a better partner against him, I think he is easily a top 4 defender. Dejan Lovren is a top 4 defender because he's played for a top 4 club for a few seasons. That just is it. The problem is Dejan Lovren has a rick in him. In each game, Dejan Lovren's concentration will go and he has a rick in him. He should be the 3rd or 4th choice defender at a top 4 club. Maybe not a title aspiration club, but a top 4 club. If he was at any club down from Everton all the way down at the bottom of the league, he'd be their best defender. At Liverpool, he's currently our probably 2nd best defender, and he shouldn't be Liverpool's 2nd best defender. He should be Liverpool's 3rd, or even to an argument, 4th best defender. Now, when the season started, when the transfer window opened, I hope that Liverpool are going to bring in 2 central defenders for it, because Saka was already gone, and we were also losing Lucas, who could fill in as a centre back and was actually quite steady as a centre back. We brought in none. So Liverpool now, for what is a long season with Champions League football. I've got their central defenders are Joe Matip, Dejan Lovren, Ragnar Klavan, and Joe Gomez. Joe Gomez has played less than 10 games as a central defender in his career. Ragnar Klavan is not of that level. He's a good defender. He's not a very good defender. It's not his fault. He's not good enough. He's good enough to be fourth or fifth choice defender at Liverpool. He shouldn't be third choice. Dejan Lovren isn't good enough to be second choice defender, to be the starting defender at a club like Liverpool. He should be third, possibly even fourth choice. Joe Matip is good enough to be a starting player, but he needs a strong player side, and that player was Virgil van Dijk. Now, what happened there, I don't know. I still think Virgil van Dijk will join Liverpool in January or possibly next season. Do I agree with the fact that Liverpool didn't go for anybody else? No, I think it's insane that Liverpool didn't go for anybody else. They could have brought in a defender. There, I do not believe for a second there was only one central defender. They could have gone for Koulibaly at Napoli. They could have gone for Stefan de Vizra at Lazio. They could have gone in for him. They could have gone in for one of the somebody like Aymeric Laporte, for instance. I know he probably won't come. I'm very well aware of that. From Atletico Bilbao, they could have gone in for him. They who else was there that I thought at the time that they could have gone in for? And they could have gone for someone like Harry Maguire, who ended up at Leicester, who's a very solid defender, and would have been a good second or third choice central defender. So to have the argument that there was only one defender out there is a weak argument. I get it that Klopp has number one targets. If he doesn't get them, he doesn't go for anybody else. I get that logic. The trouble is, it's left Liverpool vastly understaffed in such a key area, and an area that absolutely needed taking care of. Liverpool are one of the easiest teams I have seen to score against, in the fact that they will give you a clear chance to score against. It's part of it is down to organisational defending, but it's not new. This has happened. Liverpool have been conceding goals far too easily since Benitez's last season in charge. So you had Benitez's last season in charge where the wheels kind of fell off because Benitez had gotten too embroiled in the politics that were in the background with Hicks and Gillette at the club. Then fucking Uncle fucking Roy came in, and we were still conceding goals there, mainly just because people fucking despised the cunt. Then you had Dalglish. There was problems when Dalglish was there. Then you moved on to Brendan Rodgers. There were still problems when Brendan Rodgers was there, and there's still problems when Klopp's there. It's a problem that Liverpool have as a club. I've had for nearly a decade now, in the sense that they are an easy team to score goals against. They give you opportunities. It's become almost like it's almost become endemic within the club, and it needs. One thing is, I think Liverpool need a few tougher sort of characters around the club who will be turning around and organising things. I think that was the idea about getting Van Dijk, in the sense that as accomplished defender he is, as good in the air as he is, etc., he's also very, very good at organising his defence, and not only his defence, his first shield of players. But Liverpool play a high block with two fast full-backs who go forward, leaving two central defenders, often who come up very high up the pitch. And normally what you'd have there is you'd have a midfielder, a defensive midfielder, who would then slot in to create three at the back, or at least two at the back if one of the defenders went forward. Liverpool don't have that. We don't play with a defensive midfielder. We don't even have a defensive midfielder at the club. So there's no one coming and slotting in there. So when teams break on us, they can break on us quite well. The other point we've got is we're shite from set pieces. At both ends of the pitch, we're terrible from set pieces. So that there is where tactically things need to happen. But I purely think it's concentration. I think Liverpool players are that concentrated on getting the ball up the pitch and scoring goals that that is constantly in their focus. They're not defensive-minded enough to the sense of where, when a ball drops, they look up to see where they can break. And by the time they've looked up to see where they can break, the ball's gone and they've lost the second ball and X team has a chance to score. That is my feeling behind that. This ridiculousness of is Klopp still the right man for Liverpool? Yes, of course he is. He's a very good manager for Liverpool, and what he's doing is very good there. We're a much better team now than we were. However, Manchester United are a better team than they were. Chelsea are a better team than they were. Tottenham are a better team than they were. Man City are a better team than they were. Everybody's better. So Liverpool have got to become better than that. We finished 4th last season. That can't be forgotten. And yeah, we got a tonking from Man City and we got taught a bit of a fucking lesson. But I don't think a home draw against Seville, who are a very good team, is that big a thing. I think that there's a current kind of obsession, and I think it's partially because of the transfer fallout, because Liverpool didn't get Van Dijk, that Liverpool had this war for defence. I think our defence last season was the 6th best in the Premier League. That's not that bad. We finished 4th, and your defence is the 6th best, and your attack is the 2nd best, I believe. It's weighing one up against the other. It's a style of play. Will it win us a title? Probably not. Does it make us a fucking entertaining watch? Yeah, kind of does. You know, a friend of mine, a Chelsea fan, and he always states, I'd much prefer to watch this Liverpool team than the Chelsea team I've got. And they won the title last season. Don't get me wrong, I prefer it to be a little bit duller and to win a title, but that's just me. So thank you for listening for me whitter on for an hour about football. I hope you've enjoyed listening. Obviously, we've got the film podcast. We've also got the Patreon. This podcast does remain free, but the Patreon stuff is there for people who are willing to give us that little bit of cash to get that little bit of extra content. So that's Patreon/DudeAndAMonkey, dudeandmonkey.com, @DudeFoz, @DudeAndMonkey, @Ian Loring. That was episode 3 or 4, I can't remember, of DaaM-U-Football. Thank you very much for listening. I should be back in either a week or a fortnight. I hopefully want a more of a regular schedule with this. Now my work situation has sort of eased itself out. I thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.